Vanderlande, moving your business forward.
Hello and welcome to this Vanderlande Connects webinar, Lights Out Baggage Towards a Revolutionized Baggage Flow. These deep dive sessions are dedicated to discussing the latest challenges and solutions in state-of-the-art logistics process automation for airports. My name is Mike Cooper. I'm your moderator for this session, which comes to you from the Vanderlande campus here in the Netherlands. With the airports industry facing numerous challenges, such as labor shortages and fluctuating demand, we are going to look at the lights out baggage operation concept and explore how to harvest the enormous potential which exists to enhance baggage flow through an interconnected data-driven ecosystem. That's great, but first I'd like to put you to work. So please feel free to ask questions at any time during the webinar. You do that by clicking on the small arrow on the top right of your screens. There's a drop-down menu which pops up, and you can type your question where it says, enter a question for staff. We'd love to have questions throughout the session, but don't worry if we do not answer your question during the show. We have a team who will be answering after the show if we don't get to yours. Right, that's it. I'd like to introduce today's first guest speaker here in the studio, Sven Platshorre. After receiving his master's degree in system engineering from Eindhoven University, Sven joined Vanderlande in 2005 as a project engineer for airports projects. He switched to the sales side of the business in 2008, and in 2013 became responsible for project and service sales in Scandinavia, where he worked and lived for 4 years. In 2017, he returned to the Netherlands and has since held roles in solutions management. He currently leads the Airport Solutions team as director and focusing on the development of integrated solutions through their life cycle. Welcome, Sven. I'm very much looking forward to your presentation. I'll leave the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike, for the kind introduction. Yeah, welcome everybody. Happy that you're all here and that you took the time to listen to our story. Today I talk about lights out baggage operations, but before we dive into that, first a little bit of introduction towards Vanderlande. I will try to keep it short because I think that most of our viewers will know us as a company, but for the ones who are new to the business, a short introduction. We're over 70 years old, so long established, market leader in many of the industries that we're active in. We are a top player within the airports industry, within the baggage handling systems, but next to that we also are active in the passenger systems within airports. And next to that, we are active in warehousing solutions and parcel. And the nice thing for Vanderlande to be active in different industries is that we can borrow and learn from each other and link them together. Within the airports environment, we are most known for the baggage handling systems, but nowadays we much more view an end-to-end process. So what we mean by that is the process of the bag from when it departs from its passenger all the way into the aircraft. So we try to have a more holistic view to the journey of the bag, and that's what we refer to with end-to-end baggage operations. And today in our webinar we will go one step further. We will also go to lights out operations. What it exactly is, I will try to tell a bit later. But first we'll go to the next topic, which is about the airport challenges that we see. So the airports industry is quickly recovering from COVID. We're almost back to the levels that we were before COVID, so before 2019. And what we see is that ramp up went really steep, much quicker than we originally expected and anticipated. And that comes, of course, with also some unexpected challenges. Maybe not all of the challenges I discuss are applicable to every airport, but I think across the industry, I think we will recognize the things that I'm going to mention here. And first of all, also already mentioned by Mike, is the labor shortages. We see that we have difficulties altogether to bring back enough staff to the airports, to the airlines, to the handlers, in order to handle all the load that we have to do. And that, of course, combined with the need to further reduce the operational cost, brings enormous challenges together. So how do we get the most of our people? How do we get the most of our assets? How do we keep them alive? How do we make sure we can operate the process? So that's what we will discuss today, how technology can help in that. Today we will focus a bit more on how can we service and operate these systems rather than how can we automate the handler process. Also, what is quite a change compared to pre-COVID, when we had quite a stable growth in the industry, is that there is now much more uncertainty. COVID has learned that we can have big decreases, but also really steep increases again, going back to original volumes. And also because of the bottom side, the labor shortages, also much more cancellations on flights. So we see that the actual load through the day on the systems varies much more than before. So how to deal with that? And very important as well, sustainability goals. I think that in every boardroom at this moment, whether it's with airlines or with airports, sustainability is quite high on the agenda. And I think that's also really a nice observation. Nice to see that it finally becomes real, and that with an intrinsic motivation to do better. And on top, there is something which has not changed. It's a passenger experience. We all work together to make the passenger experience as seamless and as positive as possible. And in our for us, it means make sure that every passenger travels with his bag, that he can rely on that his bag will be there when he arrives. So, and then into the topic of today, lights out baggage operations. And I like to start with to mention it's a vision. It is not something of today. It is not something of tomorrow, but it is something that we're working towards. So it is something of the future. And it's also not something that we will all implement in every airport, but we will for sure pick and choose what is most suitable to specific airports, to specific regions. So together with you, decide what is applicable where. But the basis behind it is that it's about automation of operations, so automation of handling bags, but also very important to automate the service of the assets and the asset management. So that's also an essential element in that. So when you combine both end-to-end baggage, automation of service tasks, you get in a way an operation where you almost literally could turn off the light. Still things will happen, but it will not happen anymore unexpected. So therefore we need highly automated solutions. We need adaptive solutions that can deal with fluctuating demands, and we need to become together very predictable. So what is going to happen? So which load will come to the system, which equipment is healthy, and which equipment requires attention. Nowadays it's possible with advanced technologies like robotics, like artificial intelligence, prescriptive operations. It's all supportive in order to achieve that lights out. And fundamental to this is the connection of every single component to the ecosystem. So Industry 4.0, make sure that we are aware on any time how our processes are running and how our equipment is running. Is it healthy or does it need attention? And if we would do all that together, what would we then achieve? And of course, the most important one in this is, I think, the top one. Events will still happen. We will still have challenges of extra demand, delays in flights, equipment that fails, but it will happen less and less unexpected. So it is a lot about predictable, being able to look ahead, and whether that is 5 minutes, 1 hour, or a couple of days, it is all about making sure that nothing happens without it being foreseen. What we still aim to do is, of course, make sure, and that's on top of everything, that every bag is delivered every time again, and to try to limit the human intervention as much as possible. And that's, of course, also a big driver to reduce cost. On one way, less hands on the bag is positive for that. The other one is also that handling of mistakes also costs a lot of energy and effort. So no short shit bags is of course a very important element in this. And systems need to become more and more adaptable to changing loads, changing circumstances. So how do we deal with the fact that flights are delayed because passengers came in late and maybe the peaks even get a bit higher than they were before? So this is at a very high level what Lights Out is about. And now we have a nice poll. And then Mike, it's
thanks a lot, Sven.
Stage.
I'll give you a little bit of a breather, and we'll get our audience to get to work if possible. If you could please answer these questions. This question, it's a difficult one because all three are very important, but which technologies do you think airports should prioritize the most? If you go to your trackpad, your mouse, or whichever device you're using, and select one of those three, and we'll put it into a poll to establish how you, our audience, are, how you're thinking about this particular subject. So which technologies do you think airports should prioritize the most? Artificial intelligence, robotics, or predictive analysis and analytics, beg your pardon. You do have to only choose one, and that's a tricky thing. I am going to choose robotics. How about you? Well, no, we're not going to ask you because you know about these things, but I think that robotics is particularly interesting in the sense that it tackles what I see from the external world as being one of the major problems, as in how to automate the systems. But of course, you need artificial intelligence and predictive analysis to go with it as well. So difficult. I would choose robotics. I don't know how long we've got for the poll. We haven't got too long, so if you could please vote, that would be great, because very, very shortly it's going to be shut down, and then we'll go to the results straight away, and then we'll know. Oh, I see things. Yes, here we go. Okay, the results are as follows. You can probably see them on your screen there. 16% for artificial intelligence, 30% for robotics, but 54% for predictive analytics. What's your reaction to that result there, Sven?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because I think all three in the end are important, but I think the essence is in what is the most, so what would you do first? And I think indeed that predictive analytics, making sure that you can look ahead, and then you can start to act on that. So I think that's essential for the next steps that we need to make. It also helps really to deliver the passenger experience, because whether a robot loads their bag or whether a human does it, they will not directly, they will not feel the difference. But the fact that we're able to predict and prevent things go wrong so that they have their bag in time, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for me. So.
Right, well, thanks very much for voting. There's another poll coming up later, so get ready with your mouse, but not right now. I'll leave you to it, Sven. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So then we go a little bit more into the solution. So first we discussed the challenge, the vision that we have, and now we're going to look how we can support in that. So our VIA digital suite, which is a platform of software solutions, is a great enabler in that. First of all, we see VIBES as being our baggage controls, so making sure that the process, the operations runs smooth, and to make sure that every bag goes to its destination in time. And that's very nicely connected to the VIA Insights, and I think that is also where we do a lot of the predictive analytics. Later, my colleague Frans will tell you a bit more about concrete examples. But with Insights, we want to become predictive. So not per se looking back, but to be able to predict the future, what's going to happen. Of course, this is all linked to the CMMS systems to make sure that also the service tasks go automated. If we would also supply PACs, we would also look to the passenger security systems. We will also look how we can link that and also use data from the passenger flows to predict also things in baggage and the other way around. And therefore, at the bottom, you see VIA Exchange, which is quite an essential block. It's about sharing data amongst different processes and amongst different software tools. But it's also an essential block in communicating towards our stakeholders. So sharing information about processes, about equipment, about things we're going to do in a digital way with the outside world, and also in the other way around. So also to collect data from other stakeholders and to enrich our data so that we have more information on what is actually going to happen which flights are coming in and how to handle them. So, and if you all do this in a good way, you will have an optimized backflow, because you know what is coming. You can start to act upon that. So if you know that the next hour is going to be quiet, you can shut down certain process area and maybe save some energy, or you could repair a certain piece of equipment which became unhealthy over the last say 24 hours. So in that way you can optimize your flow, make sure that baggage are delivered to the passengers, but still, and then connecting to the second point, make sure that you're having stable operation to make sure that you deliver your bags in time to your handlers, to your airlines. Financial stability, of course, also very important in the industry, especially since we went through some tough years altogether. Being able to predict when things fail also means that you do not have to repair it if it's not yet failing. So the better you become in that, also you can really save on the effort that you need to do. You can save on the amount of inspections that you need to do, but also you can save on the amount of parts you need to exchange. And that's of course a nice link to the sustainability. Don't do unnecessary things. Getting most out of your assets, so to make sure that they perform in an optimized way, also contributes a lot to sustainability. No mistakes, so not to handle short ship bags, of course, also a big contributor. And if you look to the angle of sustainability towards more the operator, it's also a way to make the task of a maintenance engineer more interesting. Don't do simple inspections anymore. Let the computer systems do that. By sensors you can measure a lot, but also make their job more worthwhile, so that they can focus on the things that really matter, is keeping stuff in good health, repairing stuff and getting the maximum out of that, rather than do the simple inspections. And that experience is a nice bridge to the last point: enhance the passenger experience. So that is all about making sure that the passengers basically do not experience anything from what we're doing all in the basement in the bags process. They just want their bag in time, in the location that they would love to. And that's a nice link to the final solutions. We're here. I think this picture is a well-known picture. It is describing the journey that we're all going through as a whole industry together, from descriptive, looking back what has happened, so that the analytics help us to realize what went wrong. But more and more we're moving via diagnostic predictive towards prescriptive. So computer systems telling us what we basically what we should do, support us in decision making, or even making automatic decisions to prevent things go wrong, so that you can focus on other things. The rest of the webinar will be focused on predictive, so concrete examples about what we can do in order to make this happen. That leaves me to the next topic, which is basically questions.
Yeah, we're going to do a short Q&A. Sorry to interrupt you there, Sven. We're going to do a short Q&A session now, but don't worry, there's another one later. So if you have a question after this for Sven, just send it in. But I have a couple on my screen already. What would be possible solutions? It's on the topic you were just mentioning. What would be possible solutions to increase sustainability? Asks Jacques.
I think it is in many different ways, and of course the most logical one is the one: don't replace unnecessary parts.
Right, that's an environmental thing, right?
It's an environmental thing, reducing our waste, getting the maximum out of the resources that we use.
Yeah.
And another one, which is also I think a very interesting one, is to prevent mistakes, because solving failure also costs time and energy. If you have to short ship bags to passengers, again, a courier needs to drive around, so limiting that is of course also a big contribution.
Yeah.
And I also love the angle of the maintenance engineer, so to make his work more meaningful,
Or
and
her.
also or her, of course, so to make sure that their job stays interesting and they can focus on things that matter.
That's interesting, because then we have the E of ESG, environment, but the S of social, which is also, some of us sometimes forget the S is social and the G is governance. So we're covering two of the ESG topics there. Well, thanks for the question, Jacques. I'll move on to the next one. Will the lights out concept, asks Anna, will the lights out concept lead to less hands-on baggage, i.e. fewer operators and less other employees in the baggage cellar? Thanks for the question.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the total concept, of course, of lights out does realize that. When it comes more to automation, I think that's a topic we will discuss in the next webinar. So make sure you tune in as well in November. Lights out, of course, also much focused on the maintenance. So how can we automate service tasks? How can we automate the asset management so that we do it with less effort, meaning also less people in the basement, and also increasing in a way security levels.
Right. Thanks a lot for that. I'm getting assigned last question for this particular session. When do you expect the concept can become reality? Because we're talking about this lights out concept. When do you expect this concept can become reality? Do you already have any pilots running? Asks Roland.
That's a very good question, and
actually,
I'm not going to answer it, because I think then I'm going to tell the story of my colleague. So maybe it's a nice bridge to Frans.
Okay, because secret for a moment. Sorry.
He's going to show real life examples and pilots.
Great, thanks very much. Great bridge there. Thanks very much, Sven. Okay. I'll introduce our next guest, Frans, who we've just announced there. Frans Weinheimer. Frans graduated from Eindhoven Technology University as an engineer in control systems technology at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering in 2005. He joined Vanderlande in 2012 as an integration manager, working on a range of airport projects. In the summer of 2014, he moved to Canada to work on the integration of Vancouver Airport's existing and new baggage handling system and Vibes software. Returning to Vanderlande headquarters after almost 3 years, he became technical product manager for Vanderlande's Vibes software suite in 2017. His interest in the interface between technology and commerce are a perfect fit for his current role as solutions manager baggage. Welcome, Frans. Looking very much forward to your part of the presentation, as Sven teased it for us. So I'll leave the stage to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for a nice introduction, and thank you for joining us today in this very informative webinar so far, I think. And I like to take it a step further into some examples and to show what we can actually do, and maybe answer the previous question on the go, actually. So let's talk about predictability and predictive. What does it mean, actually? What does it bring? Why is predictive important for this light out package concept? And why does it in the end reduce mishandled bags? And why does it in the end reduce the stress we put on our teams in the baggage cellar? But what is predictability in the first place? I'd like to start off with a small example of your car. And we all know this little orange light blinking ping that your fuel is almost run out. That's a warning, and warnings usually come almost too late, or errors when it's actually too late already. Predictability is your car telling you that you have like 30 miles left in your tank, and that's only 20 miles to get home, so that you're actually still good. Or at another day, maybe you have your tank half full, but you have this long trip coming up, so even half full is not enough. That's predictability, and to take that to the baggage hall and to our baggage systems, we can talk about equipment, talking about failures, predicting failures, predicting when maintenance or replacements are needed. And we can talk about processes, so where the baggage process is at risk itself. But I'd like to start with equipment and talk a bit about condition-based maintenance. There's a lot of talk, I think, in the industry around condition-based maintenance. There's a lot of buzzwords on big data, gathering data, putting sensors everywhere in the system. And And there's a lot to measure, right? You can measure temperature, pressure, vibrations, ultrasone, oil, a lot of things. But it's also quite a expensive venture to just equip your complete system with sensors and save all that data. So it starts with actually knowing where to look for. And I like to use this little example here about the temperature trend on a motor, a drive on a conveyor belt. And what you see actually is the maximum temperature of that motor after half an hour of running. And what you see is that over the months slowly increases. So this motor gets a harder job. Something is off, not in the motor itself per se, but something in the conveyor is off, which causes the motor to have a harder time. And here in July, something happens. The temperature drops. Things are back to normal. What happened in July? In July, something broke or something got stuck. The belt was misaligned and it was repaired. So the day after, motor is back to normal, conveyor is back to normal. This tells us something. This tells us that somewhere in May or in June, we could have seen this coming. And we could have predicted that same things were going wrong. And you could have planned a inspection round. You could have gone there, change it out on a normal Tuesday afternoon instead of middle of the night, and prevent a thing of going wrong in the first place. And that is the nice thing about condition-based maintenance. And that comes back in several ways. It starts with efficient maintenance. If you know in advance that something is going to happen, you can send somewhere there for a visual inspection. You can prevent something for happening before it even happened. But it also means that you don't have to inspect everything on a regular basis. You can actually start to lean on what those sensors tell you. So you can probably plan your maintenance in a more a nicer way during the week, during the day. If you know where to go, you can actually target those things which need maintenance. And in the end, obviously, you prevent things going wrong by being there before it happens, and that reduces your mishandled bag rates. And that's obviously the one which impacts the passengers in a very positive way, I think. So it has both an effect on the passenger experience, but even so on your staffing and what's happening there in this baggage cellar. So to go step by step, it starts with putting sensors on equipment, regular measure values there. Measure parameters, measure values, store that data, put it in dashboards, and look for trends, look for deviations of those trends. And then it needs process engineers. It needs process engineers to put that data into machine learning to start recognizing things like, hey, if this temperature happens, then something goes wrong. If there's some vibration, nothing happens. So this temperature is actually the measure I'm looking for, not the vibration. And if you know that, you can make warnings on that. You can, based on those warnings, send people into the field and expect targeted pieces of equipment. Plan maintenance if you indeed see something is off, and end of the day, prevent the issue before it actually happened. I'd like to take us to a practical example here. And also I'd like to take a moment to thank Schiphol for what has been a very great cooperation here on condition-based maintenance in Amsterdam. Where Schiphol provided 300 sensors, put it on what they thought was essential equipment, essential for good baggage operation. We've been measuring temperature, vibrations there regularly over 11 months. And our process engineers have been looking for trends there. They have been trying to find triggers in those data which indicate that something is going wrong in the next couple of weeks. And it's interesting to know how much we can actually prevent with that. And I believe our host actually has a question for you on this, Paul. So
it's actually a quiz now. It's turned into a quiz. It was a poll, now it's a quiz. Because we'd like to know if you could have a guess, or you might already know, how many outages do you think could have been predicted by measuring and analyzing temperature and vibrations in this example that we've just seen at Schiphol? 9%, 26%, or 48%? How many outages could have been predicted with these sensors? I think is this specific case, or is this a more general idea?
I think it holds more general, but the question is, I think, really on the specific case, because there we have actual proof.
Right, and you have this certain number of sensors.
Yes.
So obviously more sensors, more data, fewer sensors, less data. So perhaps you could grab your mouse and put down that cup of coffee or tea, or ginger tea is very trendy over here in the Netherlands. A, 9%, B, 26%, and C, 48%. That'd be great if you could check it out. I'm going to have a wild guess. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not going to say what I think because I have no idea whatsoever. So I can't possibly predict this. But I think the poll is the poll is about to close. So if you could if you could put your vote in, I think the results are coming through now. Yeah, sorry to delay there. Oh, look at that. 9% said 5%, 26%, sorry, I got that the wrong way around. 5% said 9%, 36%, about just over a third, said 26%, and 60% said 48%. So what is the correct answer, Frans?
Yeah, let's go there. I know the answer, of course, and how much I like it to be this 48%. The answer actually in this case is 26%.
Right.
Give also that this was a trial, right? So
right, exactly.
I think the higher is also the target where we want to go with this.
Exactly. I'll let you get on with your presentation. We'll find out more. Thanks very much for joining in with the quiz.
Thank you. And let me elaborate a bit more on those results, because indeed in 26% of the cases we could actually predict that something was going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Not only that, because predicting is only one, it's also about the confidence you have in those triggers. And in 83% of the cases, the triggers we got were actually leading to something going wrong, which means that there's only 70% was a false alarm. So it's actually a really good hit rate there on the trigger. And all in all, this if you implement this in your whole baggage system, this can lead to a whole lot of reduced mishandled bags, which is obviously the nice thing to point out there because it's towards passengers, but it also leads to a much more targeted maintenance operation. Let's wrap up equipment and go to process, because I think equipment is the one we speak most about often. You hear most about it. It's more tangible. You can touch it. Processes are sometimes a little harder to grasp. But you can gain as much in process and process optimization as you can on the condition-based maintenance. And why is that? Let's go back to this car example. Process optimization means your navigation being able to tell you that it's 30 minutes to work on a Monday. Not only that, it also means that it can say, hey, on a Tuesday morning, actually maybe take 45 minutes because it's usually a bit busy. And on a Thursday, if you would actually leave 5 minutes earlier, you beat traffic and you'll be at work 15 minutes earlier. And that is process optimization. It's being able to play around a little bit with your flow, with your baggage flow, in order to have much more output out of your system. So let's have a look at that. The benefits here, of course, it starts with baggage flow. It starts by able to predict, and then we're back to predictability, and it starts to be able to predict the baggage flow. Then use that data to be able to influence the baggage flow. So maybe change a resource, send bags to a different location, know which bags are at risk, or know that if you hold these not so urgent bags for just 5 minutes, that other bags actually make that destination. So it's this in-depth knowledge of your process, which again leads to reduced mishandled bags. And that's what process optimization is about. So step by step. It starts again with extensive and advanced analytics to analyze historic data. So save a lot of historic data, not on equipment this time, but on processes, on how many bags were where, what happened, were they on time, and if not, why. And then identify again parameters. But this actually goes in reverse. You see a bag misses a flight, or there are mishandled bags, and then you work your way backward. Like what happened in the hour before that? What happened 2 hours before that? And if that same thing happens again, does it again impact some bags? And if you start to know that, if you start to analyze that, you can also put warnings on it, like, hey, this happened before and then something went south. So if this happens again, be careful. Then you can review that data, you can look what to do. Maybe you need to change a check-in, maybe you can change your process permanently, or maybe you need to do a one-time intervention there. But again, be able to reroute bags before it is too late in order to save those precious bags and have them be on time at the right place. To put this in an example as well, I'd like to use recirculation. And now I know people say like recirculation, we do that for ages. That's a SCADA alarm. We know about recirculation warnings. But that is your fuel alarm being almost too late. What process optimization is about is slightly more capacity at check-in. Maybe still okay recirculation, but slightly more than you expect on a Thursday afternoon. And then combined with this one little blockage somewhere, last time that happened, something went wrong. So this time it's cause for a warning. Then you turn a warning into actual process optimizations. So we have process engineers who do this regularly already, and we have customers, we have integration teams benefiting of that. And these are a few quotes I got back from operators, from engineers in the field, who claim that they prevent incidents, that they prevented penalties, that they reduced the time to analyze missing bag reports, that they were able to identify issues earlier on in the process. So all things, all feedback we like to hear, because that proves that this process optimization is actually worthwhile. To wrap that all up and to bring it back to this picture where Sven started out with, descriptive, knowing what has happened, diagnostic, knowing why it actually happened, into predictive, what we have been talking about today. Can we predict the near future in order to do a better job? Now at Vanderlande, I think we believe in integration. So integration between baggage handling systems, between software, high-level controls, processes, optimization, everything, trying to combine that whole end-to-end process. Not only that, also I think that big data it's a bit of a buzzword. To turn that into actionable items, that makes it valuable. And I think having an outlook on where this should lead is back to your control room. If you can combine all those learnings from process optimizations we already have today, then you can turn that into condensed and actionable alarms. In international, 5 bags at risk because the same thing happened as last year. Or on the condition-based maintenance example, this specific conveyor has a too high temperature. So somewhere in the next 2 days, maybe you can expect something go wrong. Link to your maintenance system, plan maintenance, and plan it in a convenient time to be ahead of the game. I think that's about predictability, and that's how this leads to this whole lights out baggage concept, where your whole baggage flow becomes far more predictable. So thank you for watching, and let's go to the questions part of this.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much for that, Frans. I wish I had my car had exactly that this morning. The little light went on. I'm sorry, I'd like to invite Sven back to the stage, and we have some of your questions now. I wish my car had predicted and said, you're going to Vanderlande, fill it up this morning, not that I've got it empty now. But anyway, that's beside the point. Here is a question from Maurits. Do airports need to have a Vanderlande site-based team in order to reach the full potential of the concept?
Yeah, it's a good question. We obviously like to have site-based teams. Let's start with that. But I don't think they necessarily do have to have a site-based team. So in many of the examples here, you see that it's trials, it's the beginning, it's there, it's reality. That we like to do in cooperation. But in the longer run, this should translate into actual products, things you can install, things where we can share learnings from all our sites into our products and into this vision we put there for a Vibes Control suite.
Right, thanks. I hope that answers your question. Question now from Maria. How much in advance can you predict that there might be an outage with condition-based maintenance? I'll repeat that, it's a bit long question. How much in advance can you predict that there might be an outage with condition-based maintenance? Who would like to take that?
Yes.
For you, Frans.
So in the example we showed, it's about weeks, a month, maybe. It obviously depends a bit on the trigger and what you're looking for. You don't want to be too far in advance because then the triggers become less accurate. But I think it's also a bit where you want to target. If you can predict, say, a bit more than a week in advance, that also means that you can plan next week's maintenance crew ahead of time.
Right.
I think that's where the big save is on your maintenance work.
Right. I hope that answers. I think different situations require different time frames.
Yeah.
Is it a system, though? So this is a question I'm asking, but is it a question? Is it a system which will learn as it progresses through time, or is that for the future?
I think to make that fully automated would be a real nice future. How we do this today is that our process engineers actually the one enacting the learning.
Right.
So they feed this data into the optimization algorithms, and then the reflexes which stem from that, as the alerts, those get programmed into the system, and then it goes automatic.
But you still have, good humans putting in some stuff, which in order to predict what might happen in the future.
Maybe nice, nice to add to that is that in the past we saw that we delivered systems and then you did not touch it anymore. Nowadays, when you deliver systems, you upgrade them constantly. So that future that Frans now talks about, that is something which is then available throughout all the systems. So in that sense, also you can say that the systems will be learning and will become better through time.
Right.
So that's
great. Thanks for that addition.
Quite an important element to add.
I have a long question from Ahmed. Thanks very much for sending it in. I will maybe read it twice. It's actually 2 questions, but we'll go through it anyway. Is predictive analysis related to temperature threshold or deploying sensors to measure vibrations? Is it taken into consideration as well for such analysis? So I think the question is, if I've understood it correctly, I'll break it into 2. Is it just temperature threshold, or are also vibration been taken into account?
Yeah, so the trial we have done at Schiphol Airport, we use sensors which do both temperature and vibration. The example I showed, at least the graph I showed, is about temperature in this case, but it's not necessarily the case. I think what is important here is that you find out which measure actually gives you the best prediction. And maybe for a misalignment that might be temperature, but for something in a gearbox that might be vibration, which you need to learn. And again, there's where those process engineers come in. And the analysis, you need to learn which sensor value indicates which failure, and if that's generic, and then you can just rely on that.
On that one, right? Thanks. I hope that answers your question, Ahmed. Ahmed's got a second question, which is really complicated for me anyway, but you guys probably know. For SCADA maximum circulation notifications, is it driven by trends analysis, or are there more receptive live solutions to predict such behaviors or notifications? I don't even understand the question, but I'm sure that can we answer that? Is it something you know what it means?
That's a very smart question, because I think that touches the core of what we're trying to do with process optimization. And I think that actually this is exactly the difference between a SCADA alarm on a fixed threshold on the one hand and the process optimization at the other hand, where the alarm on a fixed threshold is an average on any day. But with the process optimization, you like to look like if it's a slower day, then this amount of recirculation already a trigger. If it's busier, it's that. Right? And it's not only recirculation, it's probably a combination of what happens elsewhere in the system and a jam and recirculation. If you're able to combine these things, then you get real powerful measures about how well your system is performing. Whereas the original SCADA alarm is a bit more targeted to only one thing.
Right.
So you really look to behavior that the system has under different circumstances, and if then the circumstance appears again and the behavior is abnormal, then you're going to react. So maybe recirculation, if it's in a quiet period, is maybe not so much of a problem, while in busy period it is. And that's what you're going to teach and learn the system. So less static, more dynamic, more based on the actual circumstances that are happening.
Right. Well, thanks very much for your question, Ahmed. That was clearly something which the gentlemen are familiar with. I hope you got answers that you're pleased with. I have thanks, guys. Oh well, thanks to you, Ahmed. Now we go to the next question. This is from Ariana. Does predictive maintenance contribute to an airport's typical sustainability goals, and how? So, does predictive maintenance contribute to sustainability goals, and how does it do that?
Yeah, I think so for sure, and I think we touched already a little bit upon it earlier. But it's all about knowing the health of your system. And nowadays, maintenance schedules are often based on the risk that the line has and a fixed frequency that belongs to that. But when you can measure the health, how healthy your system is, you can also decide when you're going to do the actual maintenance. So it is all about preventing unnecessary action. And of course, that's a big contributor to sustainability. So not replacing parts when it's not necessary, making the job of the maintenance engineer more interesting, and not do inspections for the sake of inspections, but really go to triggered events where something is wrong and act upon that.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Frans?
I think no, actually, it's
right. It's clear. I think we mentioned it a couple of times, but we've also had the social element of the keeping the job interesting is a social aspect of sustainability goals, I would say. Have another question here from John. Do you offer training for condition-based maintenance?
Yeah, that's a great question. That also evolves with it. I think the examples we show today are trials where we are together with the industry actually learning how this works and how to make that valuable. This is going to be changed into products, and the more it gets integrated into our Vibes control suite, for instance, or in updates of it, if you already have Vibes today. It also becomes a trainable thing, and then trainings become available, and it follows the regular process almost, I'd say there. So yes.
So the answer is yes. The short answer. Thanks very much. Question now from Roy. Thanks, Roy. Many airport baggage systems are not as mature as others. Can your principle be fitted to all baggage systems?
Yes, and of course it is. I think if you remember one of the earlier slides, when we said one of the foundational items is that you need to measure, and of course it is always in a brownfield environment looking to which sensors you can add or which data is already available. But the mechanisms, the principles behind that's very well possible. And the example in Schiphol is also, it is in a brownfield environment, so in an existing line it was added on later, making use of a wireless network and plug-in sensors, and then focusing on the assets. Of course, if you on the high risk assets, of course, if you would go to a greenfield system, build everything new, then you would make it already part of the design, part of the system. So then the data is extracted already automatically. You don't have to add sensors or networks to do that. So I think that's the difference. So you need to do a little bit of additional effort, but for sure it is retrofittable.
Right, I hope that answers your question, Roy. The answer is yes. Right, final question now from Bert. Bert or Bert, I'm not quite sure which one, depending on which geography you're coming from. How autonomous do you think a baggage handling system can become eventually with predictive maintenance, robotics, and artificial intelligence? Looking into the future.
Yeah, that's.
I think it's a good question, and the fact that we've put it as a vision there. So. But I do think it's a realistic vision. It's not something of today or tomorrow, so it's a bit further in the future. But technology will or is already and will enable it. So that's for sure. And then of course it's always in the communication together with airports. Which elements of this vision are important to you, and what do you want to implement on a local level? So it is not going to be that every airport is going to be autonomous, and I don't think that's per se a requirement.
Right.
But it is about deciding to which level you want to go.
Right.
And I think it helps them to put a little bit of
the future vision.
the future vision. So to make sure that you have all those elements available, and then you choose what to implement where.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Frans? How autonomous can these systems become?
Yeah, maybe one thing to add is I think they can become very autonomous. That doesn't mean to say that you take all the people out of it. I think you take the unpredictability out of it, and people waiting there for something to happen. You will always need people to run a system, but I think this helps to make the job predictable. And then that you can do this maintenance on a Monday, that you need to service your robots on a Tuesday, that you need to go there on a Wednesday. Instead of this phone call at 2 a.m. like hey, something broke down, run.
Right.
So it makes it's sustainable.
Makes a lot of sense there. We've finished with the viewers' questions now, but I'd like you to ask a question to each other. So have you got a question that you would like to ask Sven, or vice versa?
I actually have a question a bit on the timing. We touched a bit on that already, but today we talk about predictability, and we talk about process optimization in the slide outs. And next time, November, we will be talking about automation. How far does it extend onto the apron? We talk about light out baggage in the baggage cellar, but the airport is bigger. Where does this take us?
I think a good question, Frans. And I do believe that the whole end-to-end process can be automated. So also things like outdoor driving, that will become real. So we see already examples from the automobile industry where cars more and more get advanced and can do self-driving. Within the indoor environment, we're actually already able to drive autonomous, so the outdoor environment will follow. But of course, it's a complicated environment with many stakeholders. It's the airport, it's the orchestrator of the apron, you have the handlers, you have the airline, so it is all about working together. So I think it is two elements which are very important to it. One is the technology that is still not there, but needs a bit further to be advanced. That will come for sure. A couple of years, so 2025, 26. That's the years you hear most. And the other element is, of course, that we need to work together with all stakeholders to get it done. So how are we going to cooperate together to make it real? And I think that will be really a case by case solution. And
thanks. That's.
Now I can.
You can grill him now. He's put you on the spot.
I don't have a real one, but I have here one magic card for you.
Yeah.
And if you can use that magic card to advance one technology or one element out of your story, what would it be? What is the one you're hoping for most?
I think I put my card on the second part of this story, on the process optimization part, and to make that bigger, because today we talked a bit about preventing jams, but there's so much more you can do with that knowledge. If you can switch off lines if it's not so busy, you can save a lot of energy, you can save a lot of wear and tear, which then comes back to condition-based maintenance as well, where you have less wear and tear. So I think what you see in airports is a very spiky behavior. We talked today about COVID and normal days, but there are summer holidays and autumn, right? There's spring break and the week after or 2 weeks after spring break. I think if you can have your baggage system follow that and plan maintenance in the low periods and have this bit extra capacity in the peaks, I think then you can both serve this flexibility, but also have a big gain on sustainability, which is getting more and more important. Well, was important, but I think we realize more and more that it is important.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for that, guys. Unfortunately, we've come to the end. And just in case anybody was wondering, we did not agree to all wear blue suits and white shirts, but it is a happy coincidence, we feel. We're going to join a band. Yeah. We're going to become a band. Thanks, gentlemen, very much for your time. Thanks for the audience.
Thank you.
I'll wrap up the show now. Thanks a lot, Sven and Frans, for giving us the lowdown on the lights out baggage system. of the future and today as well. Thanks to all of you viewers for watching and interacting with us, especially with the number of different things. If you enjoyed this webinar, you may well want to register for the next edition of Vanderlande Connects for Airports, because the title is Robots and AI, the Role of New Technologies in End-to-End Baggage Operations. So it's like the next chapter of what we've heard today, I would say. We will explore how robotics and AI can be integrated into the end-to-end baggage flow to transform the operations. So how do you do it? I'll tell you. To register, go to vanderlande.com/events, and that's where you can register for the event, which is on Thursday, the 24th of November, 2022, obviously, at 11 a.m. European time. Also, keep an eye on LinkedIn, because we often publicize matters there. And if you follow Vanderlande on LinkedIn anyway, because that's a great place to find out what's going on. Right, we've come to the end. That's all from me and the team here in the Netherlands. Thanks very much to everybody for joining in, and thanks you for watching. Take care, have a great day, and see you next time on Vanderlande Connects.
Vanderlande, moving your business forward.